Our topic today would be Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon was the epitome of the Elizabethan and the Jacobean gentleman, a very inquisitive mind, a very scientific kind of temperament. He was also the Viscount of St. Alban. He was also the Attorney General of his time, and he was one of the greatest statesmen that England had ever produced. He was also a spy master, a spy, a scientist, a writer of essays, a writer in general, a bit of a philosopher, and all in all, he was a person of many talents. As soon as we think of Francis Bacon, there are certain things that come into our minds, and the most important thing for the students and any general reader who is reading his essays for pleasure or for examination is his style. Now, Bacon's prose style, the style in which he wrote his essays, the kind of language he uses while writing those, and especially the construction of his sentences, are quite the thing that any student of literature have to study about. And while studying, we can all but marvel at the kind of language, the well-oiled, well-fitting, concise, precise kind of language that Bacon has used while writing his essays. And mostly the essays that we read as students of literature, they are mostly on certain topics, and they begin with the preposition of, like of studies, of travel, etc. And numerous quotes and sentences and phrases from these essays, they have passed on to the general English as very well remembered and very much used quotations that can grace any occasion, any way, that is. So, what exactly do we think about Francis Bacon when we think about his writings and his achievements? He was a courtier in the age of Elizabeth and James I. He was the scientist of his age. He was not just a scientist in the general sense of the word, general sense of the word and the world, but he is also the person who is credited to have discovered and formulated the scientific method. He is also the father of empiricism, the empirical culture that is at the heart of all kinds of science studies as we know of them today. More of his science later, but how exactly do we classify Bacon? Well, he is Elizabethan. He has a scientific temperament. His prose style is precise, concise, pointy to some extent, and his writing does not support the long-handedness or the extreme long-windedness of romantic prose. It's not romantic in the least, but the kind of prose that we expect of a person who is deeply steeped in scientific studies. His prose is more of science than of literature, and at almost every point of his essays, we find him either defining something in his own concise way or some sort of putting up descriptions. He's putting up descriptions of every kind of things in his own way, which have their kind of terseness, and they are very to the point. Well, so much for his prose and the kind of things he wrote. The essay that we are going to study right now is Bacon's Of Empire. Now, empire is very important in Bacon's time because Britain was seeing the birth of the first colonies. It was in Bacon's age, or the Elizabethan age, that the first British colonizers departed for the New World, that is America. And the concept of colonization, যাকে আমরা বাংলায় বলি উপনিবেশ বা ঔপনিবেশিকতাবাদ, that was born, not just born, but it took a shape that we know of today in the reign of Queen Elizabeth, and also the aftermath of that very eventful age. And Bacon was amongst all this. Actually, there are certain documents which show that he was one of the masterminds behind the planning of colonies and certain satellite settlements. I am calling them satellite settlements because colonization, as we know of now, was an alien term then, because they were not just colonies, they were settlements of Britain outside Britain. So colonization at that time was more like home outside home, that is home beyond home, that is people of England trying to carve out a piece of England in a foreign and alien land. And that was the thing that Bacon's age has given us in the legacy. More of that in some future talk maybe, but once again let us come back to Bacon and his style and his musings of the empire that is yet to be born.